As always, welcome back to another game-changing episode that you cannot afford to miss. Right? You know, a lot of us think love is all about giving, giving, giving. But what if I told you that setting limits is the secret sauce to love, and that not only lasts, but it also thrives? That's right. Today, we're diving deep into boundaries in blooms, how setting limits can promote growth. This isn't just advice, it's a lifestyle transformation based on biblical principles like love your neighbor as yourself. But remember, loving yourself involves setting boundaries. You will learn why boundaries aren't just walls, they're doors to a better relationship. We're going to equip you with the how and the when and the why of setting boundaries that serve not just you, but the greater good of your relationship and humanity at large. If this resonates with you, make sure, as I stated earlier, to join the community, and also make sure that you join the Diamond Club as well, where we nurture love and growth among like minded members. Trust me, you will wish you had this wisdom years ago. Lastly, don't miss out. Smash the subscribe button and go ahead and hit the notification as well. So, Miss Onita, as you know, I like to start off with a question. And so, my question for you is, how do you describe boundaries, and how do you view the necessity of them in relationships?
Well, good morning again, everyone. And of course, you're going to start with me. I'm always under the microscope.
I'm sorry.
uh, so, to me, how I would describe boundaries is that they're based off of my values. And these are things that are my non negotiables. I'm not going to budge. I'm not going to budge with who I serve, which is God, my sexuality, physical touch, my children. These are things that are in my boundaries. Also, setting parameters so that way I can maintain my independence. Because in relationships, we tend to mesh and then we become one and we lose who we are. So I've done that in the past and I've learned how not to do that. So these are things that I'm willing and not willing to engage in. And they also protect us from burnout. To me, it improves my mental health. So this is a form of self care, setting boundaries in relationships.
I like it. I also like the fact that you brought in the concept of burnout, because that's something that we never really consider when it comes down to a relationship, right? And a lot of times, it's like, for me, I describe burnout like, if you ever have you driven a stick shift before, a manual drive vehicle? No, see, I knew it. So if you've ever driven a manual drive, it's like trying to get up to a higher rate of speed in low gear. You just start redlining. And I like the fact that you mentioned that, because that's how I view what actually happens when you do not have boundaries or effectively establish boundaries in the space of relationships. For me, I look at boundaries as a measure of kind of like protection, right? For those of us who own houses, if you have a fence, that is a form of a boundary. The exterior wall of your house is a form of a boundary. And so both of those are degrees of protection. In most cases, they become multi layers of protection. Um, there is a version of relationship that requires you and you alone, but then there's a version that you expose to another person. There's some things that we have to set boundaries for, right? And then as time progresses, those boundaries start to soften and open based upon the depth and breadth of that relationship. So when I view the necessity of them in relationships, it's extremely necessary. In fact, I will go a step further to say, if you don't have any boundaries in your relationship, I will also say that I don't think your relationship is a healthy one. It is a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Because when we do not set these boundaries in the space of relationship, then what's going to end up happening is that someone is going to cross them in most cases unintentionally, right? And then in most cases habitually, regardless of which version they go along with. If we don't have those boundaries, then we don't have a conversation piece afterwards, right? Now we're introducing new information to that person, and they may not have known that they crossed that line with you as well. So I think that's important to understand as we dive into this great conversation. Adrian, good to see you, my friend. Welcome to the show. Adrian and Adrienne, right? Two Adrians in the chat. So good to see both of you, and welcome to the show. And there he goes, Mr. Poor Man, Dr. Phil. He is always on it, right? No boundaries, then no offense. Absolutely. Absolutely. So as we get into it, I want to kind of break this conversation down. And version I want to address is what I tend to call practical implications, right? And I think it's important to look at it because I like to look at not just talking about things from a theoretical perspective, but how can I make it practical? How can I put it into play? So that said, the first question under practical implication is what is the difference between a healthy boundary, and if you don't mind, give an example, and an emotional barrier, or what most people tend to call ultimatums.
I would really love for you to take this
I
question
knew
first.
you was. It was in the air. I saw it coming.
You saw it, right?
I saw it. I saw it.
And it's a reason why, because you that last word that you use, ultimatum.
Ultimatum.
Yeah, I want you to take this one first.
Okay. All right. So for me, like I like to describe it in a number in this particular way. So a healthy boundary is kind of like what I just described, right? The thing that protects and preserves a version of me that I need to maintain its authentic nature, right? I believe when we start looking at the term relationship, I think the term relationship is synonymous with sacrifice, and we'll get into that a little later, right? Therefore, I will sacrifice myself, something about me, for the sake of the development and maintenance of a healthy relationship. Therefore, what does that mean? That means the time that I spend in the morning for me, because I wake up early at 4:30. So 4:30 for me is sacred. I don't let anyone interfere with that. I will never let anyone interfere with that. You can get mad at me all you want to for waking up at 4:30 in the morning. You're just gonna have to get over that because that's the time I have set aside for myself for prayer, meditation, education, things of that nature. There's something that I'm doing for the sake of preserving my relationship with the Most High. That is one of the most important things to me. On the other hand, when we start talking emotional barriers, now what I'm saying is that on one hand, I don't want to do the necessary work that is needed so that I can come to grips with the thing that I don't like. Maybe it's me, not necessarily the thing that I don't like. So if I don't do the work, if I set a boundary around the emotions, right, that barrier, then what ends up happening is that I can threaten the relationship, or in some cases, we give other people ultimatums if you don't then, right? So, if then statements, right? And so I think that becomes a very dangerous game in the space of relationship. I go back to it, relationship and sacrifice is synonymous, right? And we understand that based upon the most profound relationship. And again, that's for believers. For the most profound relationship that we have, and that's the relationship with the Most High. He sacrificed himself for us, right? So he is the blueprint of relationship. So we understand that moving forward into relationship. So healthy boundary benefits the relationship. Emotional boundary or ultimatum benefits me.
I like how you broke that down. And the reason why that's why I wanted you to go, because we've talked about ultimatums before in the past, and it's more centered around selfishness. If you don't, and I'm not saying all the time, okay, let me retract, not all the time. In certain situations, there has to be an ultimatum made, um, because it's dealing with safety. If you don't do this, then I cannot continue because this is affecting my health. This is affecting my finances in that sense. But I believe emotional barriers, when we put those up, it's basically based off of triggers. That's in my opinion. Because if I'm remembering what happened to me before, and this is an emotional response, and that emotional response is reminding me of this, so now I don't want to do it. So I put a barrier around certain things because I remember how it felt in a previous relationship, where a healthy boundary is not centered around emotion. It's totally separate, in my opinion. I'm not saying this is for everybody, but for me, my healthy boundaries, like I said before, they're based on my values, it's based on my faith, my belief system, where emotional barriers, and I can be honest and say there are some things that I'm still working out that if you say it, say, I don't want to deal with you no more because you hurt my feelings. That's an emotion. And now I've put you in this box of, oh, well, this person hurt my feelings. Now I'm being emotional. I'm giving you an emotional reaction versus, am I able to get over this? Or is it something I'm gonna sit with and you know what, since you did this, I'm not talking to you anymore. So I like that you brought up how emotional barriers can trigger an ultimatum versus, is this really a healthy boundary? Is it limiting us? Because if it is, how can we move forward in the relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want you to kind of go back and clearly, because we did have this conversation before, and I want you to go back and clearly articulate that ultimatum concept because you described it differently. So, if you don't mind, kind of like unpack that just a little bit.
So for ultimatum, you mean like in a okay? Uh, I'm going to be petty because this is the only way I can. I mean, it's other ways or other ultimatums, but
Listen, petty is accepted on this platform. It's done out of love. And I had to explain that last night.
oh man, you don't stop talking to her, if you don't stop being her friend, then we're done. And this could be in a friendship, not just a intimate relationship, man and woman. It could be in a friendship with a female or a male. They don't like the person that you're friends with. So if you don't stop talking to her, then we're not friends no more. That's an ultimatum. You just it's basically, this is a decision that I'm making. It's a demand, and there's a choice in terms. If you don't do it, then this is what's going to happen.
I got it. I'm with it. I like what you're doing, and you know what? I'm gonna be honest with you. I know when some people hear that, they're like, "Oh my God, you're trying to dictate who I hang out with. You're trying to, mandate my friend." But let's be honest. In some cases, there are some people that's not healthy for the relationship. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have to define, and this is just me. I'm not going to define your friendships for you. I'm just going to articulate the behavior that I identify in some of the friends that you possess, right? And I said that intentionally possess, right? And we got to be honest. Like there are some people, like I am an advocate of friends in support of the relationship. But we need to understand, do I have friends that support our relationship or they just support the version of me that they knew before the relationship? And if we don't necessarily address that in our minds, then we can maintain relationships that are unhealthy for the direction that I am moving in now, and it could be a version of sabotage. Uh, I'm still struggling with the word ultimatum. You know that. And I did that intentionally, right? Because, like she said, we had this conversation before. I want to go back simply because at the end of the day, um, when it comes down to my emotions, how I feel, it is for me. I want to make sure that I'm addressing that because a lot of times what we try to do is we try to point the emotions at the other person. So based upon whatever information in the environment, it is my emotions kind of identify a thing about that thing. So I need to, sit with myself and understand why I feel this way about this particular thing. Why do I feel this way about this particular behavior? When I do that, then I don't point the emotions at the other person. I point what I learned in the conversation with myself at the other person. So when I understand these friends, that you possess that you're trying to hold on to that do not mean you any good at this current state in time, then I am addressing the behavior, not necessarily attacking the friends, not necessarily attacking you. I'm addressing the observations. So I have to be objective, and so I think it's important for us to clearly define that. And so if we don't, in the space of relationship, articulate these things, and those things that we articulate and address early become a boundary, then I think, Roland said it earlier. If I do not establish them, then there are no offenses. And if there are no offenses, that means we're living in the wild, wild west. Any and everything goes. So great response, and I appreciate that. Let's just jump on some of these comments out here because, man, you guys are already on it. Let's start with Adrian's. With boundaries are my protection to protect me from transforming into a version of me that is unhealthy. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the prerequisite of that is that I have to have a clear understanding of who I am and I have to understand what is healthy. And if we don't do that, then we're open to any and every version that is placed out there. Poor man, that's called because that's what he does. An ultimatum is a final consequence attached to it. It hinges on the threats of finality. And I get it. Somebody, someplace, I get it. If You identify a thing and the person does not necessarily make the change. Can that be a version of an ultimatum? I don't think that's an ultimatum. I think that's just a breach of contract, right? Even in a situation where the contract doesn't exist yet, right? You're moving toward the agreement. This is the get to know you phase, right? And in the get to know you phase, we're learning one another. And once I learn that you do not possess at this stage in your life the capacity to have healthy relationship, I just got to be honest with myself and you. And when we don't do that, I think we put ourselves in situations that lead to that unhealthiness as well. So I like that. I like that.
Question.
Uh oh, here it comes. Yes.
So, would you think it would be wise to, I guess, address certain things or ultimatums? Because some people have said, listen, if you in the beginning of the get to know you stage, if you do this, I'm out. Do you think that's wise to do it, or should you just wait? I guess as the relationship progresses, to say this is a non-negotiable. I will cut you off. No explanation type thing.
So to answer your question, do I think it is wise to address it? Yes. Anytime you bring conversation, anytime you ask me a question pertaining to conversation, right? The answer is always yes. It is wise to have conversation early. That way there's no surprise as progressing forward. But the other side to that coin, if you are the person that says, oh, if this person cheats on me, then I'm out. Well, stay single. Just being honest, because what you're really saying is that I don't have forgiveness in my heart. That's what you're saying. And this is the thing that I say because society over glamorized certain things. So what are we really saying when we identify this one thing over anything? Well, what I'm saying is that I don't have the emotional capacity to overcome that if it is presented to me. So my advice to that person, don't even worry about having a conversation, just stay single. Don't waste another person's time by trying to tell them that you're perfect and you don't have room for their imperfections. So stay single.
I would love to see the fireworks going on in the chat right
Oh
now, but
yeah,
okay.
it's coming. It's coming. I told you pettiness is accepted here. So so I think the next one was Michelle. Michelle said a healthy boundary is a personal limit or guideline that I established to protect my mental, physical, and emotional well-being. Absolutely. And you should not be in a relationship with a person. I see what you did there too, Michelle. That came from last night. Very good. That you should not be in a position in a relationship with a person who would challenge the mental, physical, or emotional wellness of you, right? Challenge to growth, yes. Challenge to detriment, no. I keep saying relationship is the space where we grow together. And if we don't grow together, we grow apart. And so that's the thing that we have to understand. Don't run from relationship if a person wants to challenge you to be better, right? I think that's petty to say, hey, you know what? I'm good. I know me. I do it when I get ready to. Stay single. Listen, I'm an advocate. Like we got to embrace our singleness because in the space of the singlehood, you understand the most important thing that you need to understand. You learn about you. And you don't learn about you to choose stubbornness. You learn about you so that you can promote internal growth. And if you're choosing not to grow, I'm sorry, you're of no value to anyone else outside of yourself. So I got it. I'm, being a little over the top this morning. That's all right. Um, Let me see. Yeah, let's kind of move on because we getting after it this morning. Okay, next question is, and this kind of goes back to what I'm saying. How do boundaries reflect your values and contribute to the greater good?
Well, we've already been discussing it. My boundaries are based on my values. And when both people understand whom they serve, what their values are, that is based on biblical principles, we don't have to spend all this time trying to battle out, okay, you did this, I did this, or you didn't do that. No, now we're focusing on moving forward. We're focused on the mission. We're focused on doing the things in the kingdom that we need to do versus getting stuck on, oh, well, you know what, you didn't do. If our values are based on the word. I'm going to go out on a limb and say there's minimal arguments, minimal disagreements because we all, or we both, have the same ideas. We both have the same mindset because of who we serve. And we talked about this on Tuesday. Who you trust in the Lord, so you're trustworthy. So we don't have to go back and forth through this. And then also we're able to get things done. It's strategy now. We already developed the foundation. The boundaries are the foundational things that need to be laid in the relationship. And like I said, values, they're intertwined with that. So how are we contribute to the greater good? We're showing others a version of Christ through one, our boundaries that's based on faith, based on the word, based on forgiveness. There's a lot of things that we've already set in stone because to me, a boundary is not something that I'm going to change unless I see that it is prohibiting us from moving forward.
Absolutely. I am definitely agreeing with everything you just said. And I think it's important for us to digest that, right? What are our values based upon? And I think when we understand that thing, that kind of helps us to establish those boundaries. My boundaries don't just exist because I just want to create a boundary about a thing. No, my boundaries exist because of my values, because of my belief system, so forth and so on. And ultimately, when I look at it, it contributes to the greater good of relationship. Again, when I make it all about me, I am saying I am the most important person in this relationship. So, Adrian, that's why I said what I said. If I am telling you, like, hey, if you do this thing to hurt my feelings, then I am setting it up in the beginning based upon some version of internalized fear, right? If I am going into any situation based upon some preconceived internalized fear, then I need to choose to remain single so I can heal. If I am putting that upfront based upon zero evidence of your behavior, that's not a conversation for me and you. That's not a boundary that I necessarily need to establish. I need to establish boundaries based upon my values. And if I establish boundaries based upon our values, and you establish boundaries based upon your values, and our values are aligned, then the things that I may have feared in the space before I choose to grow, I don't have to worry about them because we have the same blueprint. We have the same concept when it comes to relationship. So when we go into a thing with fear being the prerequisite, it's almost guaranteed to happen. So, in other words, we will create what is known as a self defeating prophecy in our life. And we don't necessarily realize we're doing it. Pay attention. There are people say, well, I don't want to be with a person that does this. And next thing you know, that's the person that they find. That's the only person that keeps showing up because they keep articulating it in their life. So again, values based boundaries is the goal for the sake of the relationship, the third part of the strand, right? Three strand cord. For the sake of the relationship, not for the sake of glorifying you, not for the sake of glorifying me. Like when we understand coming together, there should be a purpose of coming together. If there is no purpose for coming together, or just simply because we want companionship, then we might be, biting off a little bit more than we can chew. So thank you for sharing that, agent. But I wanted to clearly articulate what I was saying, because I definitely get what you're saying, right? Good to see you, Natasha, and welcome to today's show. Yeah, let's keep pressing forward, because again, I want to make sure. Oh yeah, this was gonna be good. Can a relationship experience both boundless love and unconditional love while upholding boundaries? No pushbacks.
See, I know. You see, because you know I was about to go. Um,
That was my hit at Petty.
absolutely,
I'm sorry.
absolutely. Boundaries that are set up garner us and help to garner us to love more. It's like you said, if you go into something with fear, don't be surprised when it shows up. So, unconditional love while upholding boundaries is, I want to be clear when I say, me upholding my boundaries does not affect me experiencing unconditional love or giving unconditional love or boundless love. This is a way to protect it because if you have unhealthy boundaries, then there is no way that you can actually experience this. You can't experience unconditional love if you have boundaries that don't make sense. or you have some that you said this to me, so I'm not talking to you for 5 days. Like, just I'm just trying to make it plain. Okay, so we have to have wisdom in this, and I'm gonna say that again. But my boundaries don't prohibit or limit love; it enhances it.
See, and that's why I wouldn't let you push it back because I knew you had the answer, right? And I like how you said it. I think the thing that we understand, I think there's a huge disconnect in what we want and what we do. You see what I'm saying? Like you're here, and I talk about this a number of times. So we like the concept of freedom, right? We live in a country that free, like freedom. I want to be free, but we don't necessarily understand. In order for freedom to exist, there has to be rules, and if there are no rules, then what ensues is chaos. Therefore, in order for boundless love to exist, there has to be boundaries, right? And I get it. In some cases, it kind of sounds oxymoronic, but really, that's what it is. For boundless love to exist, there have to be boundaries. That's why when you go into the Bible, there are these things called the law, right? So, in order for you to be free, whoever the Son set free, he is free indeed, right? There has to be a version of your deeds that you have to actually restrict to the law. So that is the very definition of freedom. Freedom is the ability to adhere to the rules that lead you down the path of freedom. Therefore, in this particular scenario, right, when it comes down to boundless, in order for boundless to exist, we have to have boundaries. That's how we can exist in the freedom. That's how we can exist in love, feeling safe at the same time. If you make that the understanding, then the conditions that lead to the understanding of love become to the point to eventually it grows to unconditional, right? So it's a very difficult concept for some to accept initially, and it requires some to sit down to think about it and toss it around and flip it and then fillet it and then put it on the shelf and then go back and pick it up later and then kind of dissect it and then kind of ask it, ask somebody else their version of it and so forth and so on. And if we do that, we can strip ourselves of the restrictive nature of my current state of mind so that I can open my mind up for a newer version, which is probably along the lines of what more right looks like. We got to realize that a lot of times we have this set mindset, and the set mindset will introduce restrictions, but that set mindset is based upon a limited understanding of what the true nature of the thing is. So kind of going back to originally about the understanding of if you do this, then right, you have to realize that in order for you to be free, I should not have to put restrictions on you. You will put restrictions on yourself based upon your relationship and your connection with the Most High. That said, I cannot see myself intertwining my life with somebody who is not connected to the Most High because now I don't have to control, there it is, I don't have to control the narrative. You will control the narrative for yourself. Then we understand that there is no such thing as the power that I have over you. I don't have power over you. You don't have power over me, right? There's only one source of power. And because of my connection with him, I allow that to consume me. Therefore, I put the restrictions on me so you don't necessarily have to say, well, oh, well, if you do this, then that's the idea. So boundaries are necessary so that we can experience boundless love, and that love which is unconditional, unlike the love that the world talks about, which is condition after condition after condition after condition after condition. Then you feel like you're in prison. So I want to make sure I say that because I think it's good. Michelle Ray says that boundaries reflect your values by serving as a manifestation of your personal principle and priorities. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. Good to see you, Shanitha, and welcome to the conversation. Poor man, Dr. Phil, doing what he does. If I love you, then I respect your boundaries and I look to see how not to go beyond those if they enhance us. Agreed. Agreed. I think that's the thing that we're getting after, right? I think not only do I respect your boundaries, but I become the defender of your boundaries. So I dare not allow another person to intrude on your boundaries as well. That's what relationship is all about. It's possible for one to experience unconditional love and boundless love while upholding boundaries. If you have a partner who respects your boundaries, then there is no worry about. Absolutely, absolutely. Great response. I appreciate you guys. Let me see. Natasha says, I would say that a prime example of on boundless love would be Will Smith's love for his wife. Even in, even in the midst of all of the adversities that they have experienced. I can see that. I can definitely understand that. Regardless of what anybody out there may think about Will Smith. Okay, I want to I want to say that I definitely understand that he does love her. And yeah, that's the perfect example of having the conversation early, right? Taking your time before getting into the relationship as well. But I definitely agree with your point, Natasha. Thank you for sharing that. Last point is healthy boundaries are not contradictory to this form of love. In fact, they can enhance them. Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, Adrian, stop, man, stop. Um, Next question, and I think this is really a great question, right? The next question is: do boundaries change over time? If so, how do I know when you change them?
Well, let us know, coach.
I knew it. I knew it. I didn't save no pushbacks. My bad. Absolutely, absolutely. I think boundaries change over time based upon a fully developed understanding of what my values are. Because you got to realize that in the beginning, I have a very, and I think everybody can relate to this. In the beginning of a thing, learning a thing, I have a immature viewpoint on it. As I start to stay with it and study it and get more information as it pertains to it, talk to people who are well versed in it, compare it to what it actually says, then my understanding of those values mature. In the maturation of those values, my boundaries mature as well. So instead, it may not necessarily sound like if you do this thing, then, right? It may say, hey, you know what? This is how I feel when this happens. So now it's a different conversation. It's not me, putting you in timeout because you was talking while I was teaching. It's me telling you, like, hey, when you talk while I'm teaching, it's almost as though you're not paying attention or you're disrupting somebody else. So now it changes from a standpoint of punishment, right, to a standpoint of understanding, right? So that's kind of like my initial address of this particular point, because I think that's the key. The key is maturing to the point of understanding. And as we mature, and this is why I say we should not rush to a relationship. We should take our time because your understanding is going to mature over time, right? And one of the things I always say, if I could turn back the hands of time, I would not have had kids till I was 35 years old. That's just me. Again, I'm not saying for anybody else, because my understanding of fatherhood changed from the point of survival in the beginning to the point of, development, encouragement, nurturing, love, and so forth and so on. But again, that's not something I understood in my earlier years. So the same thing applies. Boundaries change over time because your understanding of the thing matures and grows.
Our answer is similar. I said absolutely, because in the beginning, just speaking of myself, when I was younger, I didn't have any boundaries, and the ones that I did have, they were more emotional based. So there wasn't anything that was based on my beliefs or my faith, because I didn't really have a relationship with the Lord to even know what that was. So over time, they did change because I matured. I learned, as well as, in different areas. There's different types of boundaries. You have financial boundaries, where some people, they just spend money frivolously, and then they're always needing a payday loan, or they're always asking somebody to borrow money, or they don't even understand credit, things of those nature. But when you grow and you mature, then you realize, I don't have to spend all the money. I don't have to apply for every credit card. I don't have to act immature with my spending habits. But as I grow and I learn more about finances, about credit, then my behavior changes. Therefore, I can actually say, "Oh no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to participate in these type of activities where it's going to cause me to be in financial deficit." I'm just using that as an example. So it's not just boundaries in a relationship; it's boundaries in all areas. As you grow, as you mature, they change. The younger version of me versus the version of me now, I'm a little bit more mature than before. I'm not going to do those things because I've learned over time some of these things are not healthy. And I'm not trying to be back and forth at the doctor because of my own choices or the lack of good choices.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, it's not a bad thing, right? It's just understanding and respecting that maturity doesn't happen overnight. Just because I wake up in the morning and say, "Hey, I want to be in a relationship," well, that maturity didn't happen at that point. You see what I'm saying? And it's not. I want to say it um, because wherever you are, regardless of, it doesn't matter who you are, wherever you are, it doesn't necessarily say that, oh, well, I recognize that I need to take more time on myself. That is a phenomenal decision to make. That's not a bad decision. I need to work on me. I want to be better for a relationship, regardless of who the person is. I want to be better for a relationship because right now I understand that this is where I am, and right now, there are some things that I know that if I get into a relationship, I am going to put it off on somebody else. And that's not good. No one should be. So here go. Here go my challenging statement again. But I already made one. Here go number two. No one is responsible for you. I want to say that again. So if you want to be in relationship, it is not another person's responsibility for you. When we really get into understanding what the scriptures actually say, don't try to make another person your God. When you do that, you run into error. And for the person who accepts that as a responsibility, well, that's a whole nother conversation, right? The Bible is crystal clear. The Bible says that God Himself, not me, not Onita, not anybody else in the chat, God will provide all of your needs according to His riches and glory. So two parts of that statement: the version where He provides your needs and your understanding of His riches and glory. And I have yet to meet a person who can articulate what their understanding of His riches and glory really mean. So we have to understand it in time. Him providing all of my needs, yes, because if I put it on Onita, and let's just say, hypothetically speaking, me and Onita's in, I like her, she like me, and we decided to get in a relationship. And I'm living with my mama right now, and so for us to spend more time together, I got to move in with you. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't now. That's a whole nother conversation between me and the fellas, right? But men, stop that. Stop doing that. Stop putting that woman in that situation. Get your own stuff first, right? Now you're in a space to where you don't necessarily need her to fill in your gaps, right? That's not her responsibility. Women, I'm just saying, stop it. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, I see your face. I'm just saying, I'm just being honest. It's a very challenging statement because we were conditioned to believe that, oh, your Prince Charming is supposed to come along and take care of you. That's not his job. That's not his job. In fact, it should be his honor if he chooses to do it, not his responsibility. Whole nother conversation though. But tune in, get into the community, and we'll articulate that in more detail. All right. Emotional and psychological in the psychological dimension. One of my favorite. Okay. First question here is do boundaries reveal our fears and affect your emotional investment in relationships? And if so, how? No pushbacks.
Unhealthy boundaries reflect our fears, um, because this is what we haven't allowed the Lord to uproot out of us and allow Him to heal. This is just my interpretation. Also, I would say that our fears are connected to some emotions, and emotions connected to some fears. Therefore, again, it's considered a trigger for some people. For myself, I can just speak on my own experiences in the past where there were certain things that I wasn't healed from. So somebody said it, somebody did it, I cut you off, no questions, no explanation. You weren't going to find me. And then as I matured, I realized it's because I feared the pain from what happened to me before happening again. And it's because I didn't allow the Lord to uproot these things, get to the bottom of it, heal so that way when something happens in a relationship, whether it's a friendship, a family member, a coworker, because these are all different types of relationships or intimate relationship, I'm not just cutting people off. As a matter of fact, the Holy Spirit revealed to me the barriers and the boundaries that I've set because of past fears is hindering me from growing and going where he wanted me to go. So I had to learn to allow the Lord to pull back the sheet, pull back the rug on these things because it was affecting me in relationships. And I'm an emotional wreck. I'm crying every day because this person hurt my feelings, or they're not talking to me. Or even, let's just get to it, they didn't tell me they loved me before they got off the phone. And if you've been a part of the community, y'all know how I feel about that. But I'm just saying, these are things that were revealed to me over time. They were affecting me emotionally in relationships. And I wasn't able to fully be myself because I wasn't even healed as myself.
Man, that is so good. So I like what you did there, by the way. I like that. Um, Controversial statement number three: your experiences are not reality. Your experiences are only your perspective of reality, and your perspective is rooted in your upbringing, your education, and your past experiences. You don't have a all-purpose viewpoint of your past experiences. So, and I'm not talking to you, Anita. I'm just talking in general, right? Um, so you don't have a all-purpose view of your past experiences. So when I take my past experiences and say it's reality, right? It is the truth. Then what I end up doing is holding people accountable for my past experiences. Therefore, I set boundaries based upon how I feel about those past experiences instead of looking at what I did, the decisions I made, and so forth and so on surrounding my past experiences. When I look at my past experiences, I probably had every sign known to man to say, don't you do it. Don't you do it. But because of the story that I had running in my head and you were willing to play the part, I said, sure, let's do it. And then when it did not work out the way I imagined it, I'm using this hypothetically now, the way I imagined it, then I leave that experience with a bitter taste in my mouth about the experience and anything that relates to the experience. And then I set boundaries surrounding that thing. And that is going to be a very difficult uphill battle because no one will ever achieve the level of perfection that you have created in your head based upon the prior fears from your experience. So, do boundaries reveal our fears? They can if you allow them to. And that's why we set these things. That's why we go into a conversation to where you just met a person yesterday and you automatically start putting in the conversation. If you do this, then man, you don't even know my last name yet. And you've already talking about stuff like that. That is, I'm telling you, red flag. That person has fear and they're trying to get you to play the part of the movie that they've already scripted. But I think Roland has said it best. He said, when I set them, yes, right? But when I'm following his lead, right, it's not to make me happy, but to give him glory. That's the key. So it has nothing to do with my past fears or past experiences because my past experiences, which may have introduced me to some of my fears, was probably in most cases, about 99.9% of the time, is something in that experience that I was supposed to learn. And what we will do is we will forego the learning and focus on the feeling and then generate a boundary surrounding that. How will it affect my emotional investment in a relationship? I won't be invested in it. I will be invested to a certain degree, and that degree is based upon your level of activity. So the investment now is based upon what you prove to me. And when I have the perspective that you must prove, what's that movie? Every time I turn around, I gotta prove my love to you. If I have the experience that says that you must prove something to me in the space of relationship and love, it's not a relationship, it's not love, and it's really another job.
He said another job,
It's a
y'all.
job.
Goodness.
It's a job. You just created the job description, and now you're giving me performance evaluations based upon how well I perform it. It's a job. So we have to be careful. That's why I say the most important work that you will ever, five heartbeats. Thanks, bro. That's why I say the most important work that you will ever do and the most important investment that you will ever make is in yourself. It doesn't matter what you look like on the outside if on the inside you're rotten.
Say that again. Say that again.
I'm already getting flat. I'm just being honest. Clothes don't make you. The hairdo don't make you. The nails don't make you. The muscles, I'm saying like I said it intentionally, don't judge me. The muscles, they don't make you, right? It's this thing here matured is what makes you. It's the character. And until we improve our character, we don't mean relationship any good. We only mean ourselves good. And we will get into situations for someone else to serve me because I'm still held handicapped by my past experiences.
Where's the collection plate?
Mm-mm,
I
mm-mm.
just used the bag.
Too soon. Just not the bag. Oh, oh my God. So Michelle says absolutely. Because when you don't accept what was and what happened, we compartmentalize it until it resurfaces. And I agree. Like that is like you're talking to what I used to describe me as the king of compartmentalization. When I was married years ago, I would get in an argument with my wife. I'm getting dressed for work, putting on my uniform, getting an argument with my wife. And by the time I got to work, I am 10 and 2. I'm good to go. It's almost like an argument never happened. I would leave work about 5, 6 p.m. after going to the gym twice that day and go home and I pick right up, right where we left off from. Now let's finish this conversation because we're going to get to the bottom of this. Because you said, you see what I'm saying? That's not good. Compartmentalization is not good. So we got to be careful. So thank you, Michelle, for saying that. Natasha, again, good to see you. And she says walls created in your life are generally a result of fear. Boundaries are a healthy viewpoint, would be a reflection of your love for self and self worth. I definitely agree with that. And thank you for that, Natasha. She always spread value whenever she show up. So we're always honored for her to be here. Adrian says, I used to be exactly where Onita was. It almost broke me until I learned to control my emotions and be more accountable for my part in my emotional plan. Absolutely. And I want to clear it up because I know Adrian, we've talked, so I understand, her thought process. Um, but I want to clear it up for anyone who's seen that word control and say, no, you're not supposed to control your emotions. The best way to articulate that is to actually make room to understand why you feel the way you feel. Kind of like what I was talking about earlier. It's not that we're just letting them flow. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I'm mad and I'm just letting everybody get it. No, it's that I understand why I feel the way I feel. Now I do the work on me so that I can do the learning that I need to learn within myself so those emotions don't prevent the space of relationship from continuing to flourish. So thank you for that, Adrian. Man, she is awesome. Your experience is not reality, just your perspective, Jules. Thank you for that. Michelle said, but society says I must look good to get you. Yeah, society said a lot of things.
Hello.
So-
Michelle.
Society says a lot of things. Society says I must be 6'4" with a six pack while you 5'2" and 275. Society says a lot of things. Stop. I'm just keeping it real. Man, come on. Don't get me started.
Okay.
I'm just
Okay.
see, I told you,
Okay now.
petty Saturday, petty Saturday. All right, moving along. Moving along. How do boundaries affect both intimacy and trust in a relationship?
Coach, what would you think it affects?
You say, how do I think?
Hmm.
So, first and foremost, I want to make sure that I'm clear. The term intimacy is not the focus on physical activity as most people tend to think, right? The term intimacy is all about the depth and breadth of the relationship, right? Emotional intimacy within a space to where I can clearly express how I feel you about a thing. You're hearing what it is I'm saying, and you want to be a helper and help me to either overcome it or battle whatever it is I'm battling, right? So intimacy in a relationship is all about the ability to have honest conversation, the ability to open up and share my deepest and darkest secrets with you because I deem you as a trustworthy person. I keep stressing this piece. It's not about trust, it's about trustworthy. Okay. So boundaries allow and it makes way for intimacy to exist in relationship. Boundaries make it possible for me to understand that you have the staying power so that when I reveal my deepest and darkest secrets to you, you won't use them against me when we get into a heated discussion 3, 4, 5 months from now. You won't turn around and take the thing and you that I shared with you and use it against me as a weapon. You won't demonize me because I share my past transgressions with you. I ain't say telling your whole story now, right? But I share my past transgressions with you, the things that keep me up at night. You won't look at me as being a weak person. So boundaries, right? Because we established that we have a conversation about that. Boundaries enhance intimacy. It makes intimacy possible. And because we both have the belief system that we have, because we both believe in and trust in the most high, then we can deem each other as being trustworthy. Didn't we just have this conversation the other day? We can deem each other as being trustworthy. I don't have to trust you per se. I trust in the fact that you are pursuing the same God that I'm pursuing. And because of our connection with Him, He, right, our understanding in Him, His articulation of who we are, it will not allow us to violate the space of the other person.
Did y'all get all that? It was a lot. I'm not going to be that in depth. I mean, this really is Dr. Dwayne, not coach, but I digress. Um, I would like to say, um, I think it enhances the relationship, having the boundaries. And let me get to, because I wrote it down. It shows that we care for each other, we're both trustworthy, and we're not trying to sway one another. We already have a foundation that's based in what God says. So I believe it increases the intimacy and the trustworthiness, like we were talking about earlier this week, in the relationship. It's not something that we have to set time aside. I'm not constantly thinking, is this person going to protect what I've told them? This is a safe space, like you were saying. Once we build this intimacy, it's not just physical, y'all. It's not 10 toes up or always laying on your back. I'm just gonna put it like that. It's more to it. So I know that I can trust you with the things that I hold close hold to heart, and you're not gonna use it as ammunition later to destroy me. I don't have to worry about that because we are both believing the same way. We both have a foundation that's set upon the word and whom we are trusting in. So the effect is beautiful. We're I mean, to have a relationship where you both are in lockstep. I've only seen it a few times in society. I would love to garner that type of relationship in my own relationship one day. But this is something, like you were saying, it's not something that's done overnight. This is something we build and we continuously build upon. And at times, you may see your partner moving away from. It's like, hold up, wait a minute, something's not right. That's not what we discussed. And I like to use my children as an example, my daughters. Even though I'm not married to their father anymore, there were certain things, a foundation that we set, how we were going to raise them when we were married. Just because we got divorced, that did not change because he's not here. I continued on with the same boundaries and the foundation that we set, even as they grew. So when people were like, "Oh, what does he have to say about it?" This was something that we said. It didn't change because we were divorced. This is something that was already laid out for how we would raise our children. So regardless if he's present or not, that does not change.
And I want to make sure that we're being clear here, right? Because the word here is affect, right? So boundaries make it possible for me to let down my shield, right? My superficial barrier that I created to keep everything out, right? When we have clearly defined boundaries based upon our values, then I can let down my, there you go, right? Boundaries affect intimacy in regards to one's willingness to become vulnerable. Absolutely. Right? I let down my superficial shield to let you in closer because now I am no longer threatened by your ability to damage me. Right. So the affective, the emotional nature behind boundary is that you can allow another person to come closer, and I think that's important. And thank you, Cassandra, for clearing that up. Michelle said it's important to recognize that while boundaries can be a way to manage and cope with fears, they should not be used as a permanent shield. Yeah, absolutely. I do believe that establishing boundaries according to your values allow you to work on you so that intimacy can become a way of life. So yes, absolutely. So thank you for saying that. Now, this actually gets me to the point of my favorite part. I'm sorry, did I say? Because I'm sorry, Natasha, if I called you Cassandra, please forgive me. Um, I'm almost 50. Leave me alone. All right, so spiritual and biblical context, right? This is probably my favorite part of the conversation. So the question here is, what does love your neighbor as yourself mean in context of setting boundaries and mutual submission?
I want to take it. Feedback about the deflect. Um, to me, this is more so if you didn't want somebody to do it to you, don't do it to them in the relationship. Um, and this, when you said mutual submission, I want to make sure that I'm clear. When we say wives submit, and it's not we, is when the word, a lot of times we forget what the text is before that. It says submit yourself one to another. That's there too. But we'll have people that use the word submission towards women, and I was excited when I saw this as a weapon. It's been weaponized. It's we are to be mutually submitted to one another. It's not just the wife to the husband. It's the husband to the wife. And in a relationship where you're hopefully moving towards marriage, there's a mutual submission here. It's not you're going to do everything that I told you to do, and I'm not going to be accountable for anything else. So, in the context of love your neighbor as yourself, we're both submitting here. There is no you up here, I'm down here, or vice versa. We're moving together in this. It's not a, I don't want you to put me on a pedestal because you're going to knock me off as soon as I make you mad, and vice versa. I don't want this to be something that what the world says, this is how you set a boundary when that's not how God intended it to be. And it says in, I pulled it up. Let me find it. I just had it. Okay, Galatians 5:14. Um, for all the laws fulfilled in one word, even in this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's a law. So are y'all gonna just decide to do it today and maybe not tomorrow? Depending on how you feel. Remember, it's not based on emotion. So if you are reading the word, you're believing what it says, this is easy for us to do. It's easy for us to love one another as we love ourselves because we're both believers in the same thing and we're both submitting to the same law.
I like it. I like it. Um, First and foremost, I want to apologize, Crystal Everett. I think I skipped over you. I was scrolling back to the top to make sure I got everybody, and I seen your name. And I'm not sure if I spoke to you, so if I didn't, please forgive me. Welcome to the show. Um, what does love your neighbor as yourself mean in the context of setting boundaries? Um, it means that love is my responsibility, for starters. Um, as I understand and continue to dissect and peel back the layers so that I can become more aware of what it really means. It means that love is now my responsibility. I don't get to put it off on you. And I can't take the fact that love is an action word or whatever, love languages or whatever we want to talk about this week, right? I can't say, well, oh, well, my love language is physical touch. Therefore, you have to show me physical touch in order for me to believe that you're wrong. That is totally wrong. That's why I despise the conversation of love language. The only way I'm open to the conversation of love languages is if you use it to recognize your own shortcomings. Love is not something that I push off on you and make it your responsibility. And love now becomes my understanding of who the Most High is for the sake of me having a better understanding of who He created me to be, in turn, for the sake of being better for a relationship, which in turn means that now mutual submission becomes the fact that I do it first. Did I say that too fast? Let me back up. If I can hit rewind, right? It means that I do it first. I'm gonna say it again. It means that I do it first. I'm gonna say it one more time. It means that I do it first because I know sometimes these YouTube and Facebook and Instacart. I mean, sorry, Instagram, whatever. Right, all of them get to acting up. Don't judge me. I just did my shopping yesterday, so all of those get to acting up. So sometimes you miss it. So I got to say it 3 times just to make sure it comes up. Mutual submission means that I do it first. The other side of it is that I don't get in a relationship with somebody who don't understand submission. So for a person who understands submission, then I submit to them first, and then I appreciate the fact that they submit to me. I don't demand it. I don't have to demand it because they're trustworthy. They understand what it means, right? We don't use scripture as weapons. We use scripture as points of understanding. We use scriptures as means for us to continue to search ourselves because we are studying together, right? So now love your neighbor as yourself. When I was single, that means that I submit to people for the sake of uplifting and edifying them. When I get married, that means that we do it. This is why I say the gateway to effective community is rebuilding the family. A community cannot thrive if the family is not there. So families must come together. Men and women need to understand that they are Adam, not man is Adam. I'm sorry, not male is Adam. Male and female is Adam. Right. So in this constant bickering in the space of social media, it is a pointless endeavor because you are arguing nothingness. It doesn't make sense. Mutual submission means that we understand who Adam is, not thinking Adam was male. I got it. I'm sorry. So that means that two are better than one. Two are stronger together. That's what the scripture says, right? Two are stronger together than just one. So in the space of setting boundaries, we set boundaries for the sake of understanding. And I'm just hypothetically using Anita because she's on screen with me, right? That means that in the space of her strength, I submit to her and let her take lead. In the space of my strength, she submits to me and let me take lead. And then it becomes a symbiotic dance going back and forth for the sake of the holistic viewpoint of the entirety of relationship. Like if I'm not mistaken, you work in the space of legal, correct?
I used to,
Oh, my
but
bad.
yeah, I'm in
Okay.
HR now.
Okay, HR. So when it comes down to HR related stuff for my business, I would be a fool not to listen to her. That's what mutual submission is. We understand when to lead and when to let the other person lead. And then it becomes a gentle sway, a dance in the space of relationship for the sake of relationship, not for the sake of my glory. And that's what I'm hearing too much of. A person want to, we are so enamored by power that we're either fighting to maintain it or we're fighting to gain it, one or the other. It is ultimately it's like for me it's like somebody taking their fingernails and going across a chalkboard. It's pointless. Like there is only one source of power. I am just a vessel. The vessel doesn't fight for more. The vessel understands its capacity. Here's the other part. Whatever goes through the vessel, the other side receives it. So if I am just a vessel, whatever comes through me to her, she gets it. Whatever comes through her to me, I get it. So it's not the fact that, we don't, you must submit to me. You must submit to me. According to the word, you submit to me. Well, have I once considered that I must first submit to the word? How do you view submitting to the word before you go around demanding that someone submit to you? I mean, mm, okay. Yeah, I know I can stand on that for weeks. Who we going to first? Looks like Michelle Ray. She said that how do I unlearn the worldly concept of self-love, which is selfish and self-centered? Just that, what you just said, right? That love is. Listen, the Bible says that God is love. That is a metaphor, right? God is love. So the minute that I put the word self in front of something that is already perfect, why do I need to put self in front of love? Why do I need to put black in front of love? That's just something that I am doing for the sake of trying to gain a version of power in a particular space, right? So self love is what I do. Black love is what we have. No, love is love. Let it be. You don't need to add to it. Like cup. You see what I'm saying? White cup describes the color behind it, but the color doesn't necessarily add value to it. It's still a cup. So if I understand the value of the cup is in the word cup, not in the color white, then we'll stop doing that. Cup. That means I can put something in it. My cup overfloweth. Right? So I'm just being honest. It just so happens
That's
it's there.
good.
It works.
That's good. I like that analogy. It's just a cup. The
It's just a cup.
value of the color, or the color doesn't change the value of what it is. That was good right there.
Right. So just because I put the word self in front of love, self didn't add value to love. Love adds value to self. Love adds value to you. Love adds value to everybody. If we stop trying to own it and make it mine. So every segregative word that we inject into something that is presented to us in perfection, it takes away from it because we focus more on the word self. We focus more on the word black. I told you I was petty Saturday. I'm sorry. Um, Man, we got to keep moving. We got about 18 minutes. Okay. Listen, y'all keep adding value to the chat because you guys are doing awesome. All right, next question, which I think we kind of started touching on it anyway. How do we reconcile the biblical principle of sacrifice with the need for care and concern when setting boundaries?
I'm just gonna be real quick. We need to ask God for wisdom in this because we can take this out of context where people are saying, "Oh, sacrifice the need and care versus concern." Well, we're not saying that you don't ask or you don't need self care or you're sacrificing your own self care for somebody else's. Go to the doctor, eat, sleep. Those are things that you need. Drink water. These are things that you need. So I don't want people to think that you're sacrificing, or when the word says sacrifice, that you're still sacrificing your health. That's not what this is. This is okay. It's a give and take thing. You need, like you said, you get up at 4:30. I don't know how you doing it every day, but you get up at 4:30. That's something that you have decided. You're making a sacrifice out of time. I should not be then trying to talk you out of this. This is the time that you spend with the Lord. This is the time that you set your day, education, whatever it is. This is something that you've already decided. Now, is that going to take away from your health? No. This is something you've decided. But for me, I have to pray and ask the Lord for wisdom at times. Okay, is it healthy for me to drive straight to get to somebody? Is it going to harm me? Probably, depending on how long the drive is. And I'm just using this as an example to make it plain. Um, or should I take breaks so I can rest, so I can get there safely in one piece? Yeah. So for me, I'm gonna say practice wisdom. Ask God for wisdom. It says that if you ask for wisdom, He will give it to you liberally. So ask for wisdom in this because this can be taken out of context and out of proportion.
That's good. I agree. I think first we need to understand what sacrifice really is, right? Sacrifice is me giving up something for the greater good. The perfect measure of sacrifice is what Christ did on the cross. Um, so understanding the biblical principle of sacrifice, right? The law of sacrifice. Now we're getting to the point to understanding that me setting boundaries is not for protecting me. Again, it is all done for the greater good. So setting boundary, right? Setting boundaries in the space of relationship is for the betterment of relationship. It's not specifically for protecting me. Again, a lot of times that's what we do. We have to understand boundaries first. That's why I described it as protection. Now, when we get to the point of understanding sacrifice, I sacrifice a version of me to set boundaries for the sake of the relationship. The relationship is more important to me. I'm going to say it again. The relationship is more important to me. Once I understand that, then I will stop making boundaries all about me. Again, there's some things that you got to give up for a relationship. There's some bad habits you got to give up for a relationship. There's some fears that you have to give up for a relationship, right? So when we do that, then we'll realize that these boundaries that I've set is not just for the other person, it's also for me. So the boundaries that are established are not my boundaries and Onita's boundary. No, it's our boundaries. The boundaries bound together for the sake of a healthy union. That's what it is. I think Natasha said it earlier, unity. That's what it's all about. If we can unite under the concept of relationship, then we both pitch into it. That's what it is. That's kind of like goes back to the dance I was just talking about, right? Constantly both giving to relationship so that relationship ultimately gives back to us. And relationship gives us far more than what we sacrifice for it. Once we understand that, then we understand the care and concern that exists in the space of relationship, right? It exacerbates because it becomes kind of like an offering. So the offering for relationship turns back and give to us tenfold. Just my thoughts. Yes. And I think that takes us to our next question, which is should boundaries be explicitly discussed or implicitly understood? And how does this align with the biblical principles of communication?
Go ahead, sir. Let
I
us
knew it.
know.
I knew it. I knew it. It was overdue, y'all. I saw it coming. Yes and yes. That's my answer. Boundaries should be explicitly discussed and implicitly understood. I don't think it's an or, I think it's an and. And here's why. There's some things I just believe that just comes with the good order and understanding of an adult. I'm sorry. Everybody knows the difference between right and wrong. Well, let me take that back. Most of us know the difference between right and wrong, right? I really do believe that. So again, part of that learning helps me to understand your ethical principles, right? What do you profess? I'm using that term intentionally. What do you profess? So the ethics that govern your profession, y'all see what I did here in a second. The ethics that govern your profession becomes the standard that you govern your life by. So I think those things should be implicitly understood, which involves the space of learning, right? Now, as I learn the ethics that you model, now I can start looking at the discussion that we need to have because there's some things that are specific to me, right? There's some things that are specific to you. So let's kind of talk about those. Let's have a discussion about that. And then in the midst of that, what we do is we develop this thing called understanding. In developing understanding based upon explicit discussion and implicit understanding prior to, then we get to the holistic concept of communication. Remember, communication isn't all about what I say, it's about part of what I say, it's about part of behavior, it's about partly response. Like all of these things is our communication. That's why I say you can't meet a person today and say, hey, you look good, you smell good, we go together. No, don't work that way. When do you take the time to learn? Because if you're not learning, trust me, If you forego learning now, or you're gonna learn something later, I don't think you're gonna like it that way. So that's just my thoughts. It's both.
I agree. And Dr. Field touched on this earlier. He said, if you don't set boundaries, then
Dr. Philbin on the show? Oh, you mean poor
poor
man, Dr.
man,
Phil.
Dr. Field.
Gotcha. I got you. My bad.
Don't see how you don't do my friend like that now.
I'm sorry, petty. I'm petty.
But he discussed this. He was like, if you don't have boundaries, then there's no offense. There's what do you have to say? So, and also just to not elaborate, but to add to, never leave these things up for assumption. Make it plain. Make sure it's understood. So that way there aren't any issues later because you've already expressed it up front. You know if this is something that you want to do going forward, or you know what, nah, this ain't gonna work. um, and if you're setting yourself up to waste your time later by not discussing it. So you've already explained it in great detail. I am in total agreement, and Dr. Phil has already expounded on this earlier.
That's what he does. He always does that. That dude is awesome. And so is every one of you in the chat. I just want to make sure that, again, I extend a great deal of appreciation to all of the value that you guys continue to add every time we go live. I don't take it lightly. I know Anita don't take it lightly. And we in the community greatly appreciate that. That said, if you have not joined the community yet, again, go ahead and join the community. We love, having these discussions on a daily basis. We like posting positivity. We just like connecting, right? And that's really what it's all about. It is a family, I believe, a family outside of family. So again, don't forget, join the community. Just go to totalmindsetshift.com/groups and just sign up to be a member. We'll welcome you with open arms, and we love continuing conversations like this. However, that brings us to the bittersweet moment of these conversations where it goes into our final thoughts. And as always on this platform, ladies first.
Thank you again for spending your Saturday morning into early afternoon with us. Like Coach said, we don't take it lightly. You could be anywhere else, but you're here. And I hope that you were able to garner some value out of it. I know I have. I always do. I'm grateful for the time that I get to spend with you all and the comments that you bring. What I would like to leave with you is, if you don't know what boundaries are, do some research so that way you're not confusing a healthy boundary versus an emotional one. And then you're putting up these walls like I did in the past, because once you put those walls up, it's hard for them to come down. So let's get into the word. Let's find out what the Lord says about what he can do for us, who he is to us, and learning how to set healthy boundaries based on the word so we can move forward and we can do greater things in our community. And with that being said, until next time, thank you guys for joining us.
Great. I greatly appreciate that. And she's right. She is absolutely correct. I think there is some things, I mean, go back and listen to it again. There are some things that we need to understand when it comes to boundaries. There are proper ways to set boundaries, and there are improper ways to set boundaries. Having your emotions projected at another person is not the proper way to set boundaries. I'm stressing this because this is what I have seen, and this is the norm. It is the norm for a person to be emotional about a thing on both sides, whether it is an outburst of emotions or whether it becomes shutting down. Right, shutting down is both of them are bad. Right, there's I can't stress the value of having open and honest conversation. So again, take the time to learn what your emotions are telling you, and then be able to articulate what you learn from them. Boundaries are necessity. I don't care what space you're in. When you're driving down the street, there are boundaries for you to drive. That kind of sets the conditions for you to have a safe passage from where you're going to where you're trying to get to. The same thing exists when it comes down to relationships. It is essential for us to have boundaries in relationships. In fact, the very nature of relationship demands boundaries. And when we try to exist in spaces where we take the boundaries off a thing, what pursue is chaos. Only thing you have to do is reflect back on the school system. They took prayer out of the school. They took all of these things out of the school. They said you can't do this in relation to kids, and you can't do that. And now look at where we're at, right? Yeah, everybody who participates, everybody gets a trophy, right? Now look at where we're at. So this isn't to judge any person. It is so that we can have an understanding of the necessity of boundaries, right? Our goal, our perspective, our joy is to be uh, perfect reflections. And I don't stress the term perfect, but to be reflections of the Most High Himself. He is the reason. I know we're coming up on Christmas and you're going to hear people say, oh, the reason for the season. No, He is the reason. Forget the season. That's all that matters. He is the reason. And if we keep reflecting back to Him and ask ourselves, what did He mean when He said this? What was the reason for Him doing this? Why is it necessary for this to take place? Then we'll understand that there are boundaries. Boundaries existed then, and boundaries must exist now. So, that being said, again, we just want to extend a great deal of appreciation for those people who joined us, those people who are still with us. Again, join the community and participate with us on a consistent basis. And on behalf of my good friend, Miss Onita V, again, thank you. Blessings to you. Have a great and wonderful rest of your Saturday. If you're available at 3:30 on CBS, we're going to watch the Georgia Bulldogs. Hopefully they can maintain their perfect record. I'm not really invested in this team this year, man. They're not looking good. But I'm still with them. I'm still pulling for my dog. So again, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Georgia take on Florida at our annual rival game. So again, we appreciate you. We value you. Have a great rest of your day. Have a fantastic weekend and just be a blessing to somebody else because that's what you're destined to do. That being said, great day to you guys and blessings. We love you.
Take me back to a place where I felt at home. Take me back to a day when we weren't alone. Take me back to an age when the world felt small. Way back before we blew it all. Take me back to a place where I felt at home. Take me back to a day when we weren't alone. Take me back to an age when the world felt small. Way back before we blew it all. Too many things going on, I can't keep track of them all. From people dropping a bomb to people putting up walls. I feel like life is on hold, perception stuck in a vault. I know that time can heal all, but how much time till we fall? It's awfully chilly outside, when there's no shelter to hide. When everything is a lie, you'll find that out in some time. But when the things on your mind are all considered a crime, communication aside, we'll all just fight till we die. Is this an argument, or just the start of it? Either